So, welcome back to the Defiant Spirit and Wealth 360, where we explore all things Enneagram and especially through the lens of wealth, finance, and investment with my good friend and financial expert, Michael Feiner. What's happening, buddy?
Good afternoon, B. I guess I'm in my Naples office, and I was just talking to our Boston office. They're getting a snowstorm, so things are good.
Things are good for you.
Good for me. They left early. They called to say we're leaving early. I said, "How come? It's early." I said, "We have a lot of snow on the ground, so I don't know. Hopefully, you
No,
have good weather."
no snow days in Naples. Yeah, it's pretty nice here. When it snows, we talked about this last time,
Yeah,
it's sunny within 24 hours, so I really have no complaints even when it snows.
yeah.
But it's a good excuse to head down to Naples and come visit you, which is what I'm planning on doing in a few
We're
weeks.
looking forward to it. We're looking forward to it next week.
Yeah, next week. So for our listeners, we're really ramping up here, all things Wealth 360, and we're going to spend some time not only hanging out and having fun, but also planning our podcast, planning next steps as we continue to evolve our program, our offerings, our message. Because as you've come to see, I'm passionate about the Enneagram, and as you've come to see, Michael is on board and right there neck and neck with me. You've become pretty passionate about it yourself.
It's become a remarkable tool to help, understand people better, help understand myself, people I work with, everything. It really is a system that you've developed that is remarkable in every way.
Well, thank you. I wish I could take full credit for it. It's been around a few thousand years, but I certainly have jumped on board and brought to it, my philosophy, which is really informed by Viktor Frankl, for those listening, Holocaust survivor, author of 40 books, including Man's Search for Meaning, father of logotherapy. I'm a logotherapist. And at the center of Viktor Frankl's message is that we always have the power to choose our response. Either we're living our life unconscious, on autopilot, reaction, or we can take back our power and choose our response. We don't control our circumstances, but we can control our response to our circumstances. And that's what I think, Michael, we both have seen in our work with our clients, our shared clients, our respective clients, that especially when, the markets are up and down and the world's spinning around, we don't control those things, but we can control our response to it. And that could be the difference maker.
It, it, it really is the secret sauce that you've brought to this project, aside from translating it for Wealth 360 business strategy, other things. But bringing that piece and adding it onto the Enneagram really is a new development. It's an evolution in the system that's so very helpful to take it. And it helps me. Not only am I communicating better, first, I thought I was doing a better job communicating with the clients, only to find out that my clients who are now skilled in the Enneagram, not only some more advanced than I am, but are communicating better with me, and I don't even know it until they make sublime comments about me as a three and the Enneagram, right? So I'm shocked in a good way that people who are absorbing, your system and your passion, it helps both ways so much.
Yeah,
I'm developing because of them too.
it's a two-way street. And for your clients who are listening, we'd love to just offer it to you, get you involved with it, because when you understand it, you can communicate with Michael or the people in your life more effectively. So it's a two-way street, and it just improves communication all around. I also would add, and I've seen this because I'm working more and more in the financial space with other individuals, people who gravitate towards finance, whatever aspect of finance you're talking about, probably are more head oriented types, right? Intellectual thinking types, probably, again, these are generalizations, but I think they're by and large true, probably not gravitating towards more of the emotional spaces like therapist, becoming a therapist. So they go become finance, and probably you need to, lean more heavily on your brain rather than your heart. And that's great, except for the fact that you still have to communicate the finances, the numbers, to people who may be heart people or maybe gut people. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I think you've struck gold on today's conversation.
Well, I didn't strike gold. You struck gold down in Naples. The great picture of Michael on Facebook that inspired this conversation. Tell us a little bit about your claim to fame down there.
Well, I'm probably going to regret this, in this conversation. But as I was taking my golden retriever Apollo to daycare, they told me that there was a dog parade on Sunday for dogs and support of charity for the Humane Society of Naples that helps support pets. So I said, this is a good idea. We can make a donation, and Apollo can go on whatever the parade meant. Well, after I signed up for it, they told me that, oh, by the way, you're supposed to dress your dog up in a storybook character. And why don't you dress Apollo up as a lion, because he looks like a lion without the mane. So I bought the mane for him on Amazon. And then they said, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, you're supposed to dress up too. I was like, what do you mean I have to dress up? This is not what I,
This is not what threes do.
This is not what threes do. We do not. I'm dressed up now. This is my
This is dressed up.
I'm underdressed because I'm just wearing a coat, not the whole three-piece. So I'm struggling to figure out what to do. And of course the daycare people are smart. They're like, he's going to be a lion. So you can either be the Lion King or you can be like do Wizard of Oz.
Nice.
Well, they don't make Dorothy's outfit big enough for me to fit into. So that was out.
Thank God.
And so I thought, I'm down to the Wizard of Oz, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man. And for some reason I picked out the Tin Man, much to my subconscious chagrin at this point, because Dr. B has, and several people have pointed out some interesting things about the Tin Man.
So, credit to where credit is due. Our shared friend Nancy pointed out on Facebook that you didn't choose the Tin Man by coincidence, that the three they spend their life as the Tin Man, doing what the Tin Man wanted to do. And that's a good segue into our conversation about the Wizard of Oz, Michael Feiner, the Tin Man, and living a life of heart. How about that?
Well, and she was brilliant insight and said that I have my heart in my golden retriever Apollo. He's my heart. And I thought that insight was just remarkable. I almost cried, honestly. I was like, wow, what? She is brilliant when she mentioned that. I almost couldn't. I was like, think about, why did I pick the Tin Man? Because I am the Tin Man, I suppose, subconsciously. And then Apollo, I pick him because he's a 7. He's lovable. He's everything. That's what I'm missing. So, and he's my heart. I already have my heart. And it was, unbelievable.
Not coincidental. Nancy's a 2, right? So she's a heart person, and she's pointed out the heart conversation. So, Nan, shout out to you. Thank you for inspiring this conversation.
Yeah, we have to. This is dedicated to Nancy. This really.
So this is both a good conversation about the Wizard of Oz, but we were going to have this conversation anyways today. So that's why it's even more profound. I said to Michael earlier today, what should we talk about on the show? And then I responded back before he even had a chance. That's what we 8s tend to do.
This is how it goes. He asked me my opinion, and before I get there, he gives 6 different, six different responses. And then before I can respond to that, he's decided.
I've decided, and
Ian made a slide before I.
I was going to say, at least I didn't dump the homework on you. So I also did the work behind the scenes, so that you don't have to lift a finger. You just show up with your, your beautiful suit.
Thank you.
But it is a perfect. I've had this conversation before around what's called the centers of intelligence. So if you're looking at the slide, I'm showing a picture of the Enneagram with 3, with the triad. So 3 sections. If you're not looking at the video, I'm happy to send this to you. So just shoot me an email at baruch@defiantspirit.org, BARUCH, and I'll send you the slide. But what we're looking at it's called the Centers of Intelligence, and I've applied the Wizard of Oz to it. We'll get to in a second. But the Centers of Intelligence stand as part of the Enneagram system, regardless of the Wizard of Oz. This is just a good narrative to talk around. And there's lots of triads in the Enneagram. So we're going to get to all of them someday, but this is the most important of all the triads. Because again, Ennea means 9, so 9 is easily divided by 3. So you'll see lots of patterns of 3. Well, the most primary 3 in the Enneagram, the triad, is the center of intelligence. And what this says simply is that we are not one-brained beings. In the West, we tend to think about intelligence as our brain, but the thing between our ears. But actually, what science has shown us is we have multiple brains in our body. We have one technical brain, but we have other types of intelligence. And so we have 3 centers of intelligence. We have the head, which is obvious. We usually not surprised by that one, the thinking brain. We have the heart, the feeling brain, and we have the gut or the body sometimes, but the instinctual brain. And so we have gut intelligence, heart intelligence, and brain intelligence. The interesting thing is, like, just down the street from Michael's home office in Boston, or in Swampscott, is Boston. And at MGH, they've done lots of research around gut intelligence and heart intelligence. And so there's more and more research to say we actually are three brained beings. It's just that we don't usually think like that. So, Michael, tell us a little bit about your insight into the heart, head, and gut of the Enneagram.
Well, I think there's no question that each part of the Enneagram has this deep level of really secondary nature, and for me, it's hard to believe. When you say it's heart feeling as a three, I'm the no heart, no feeling is the three. So it's interesting. So the two, is the deep feeling person, where the three, has trouble with the feeling, and hence why the Tin Man that Nancy pointed out and B jumped on, um, pointed out he's looking for his heart,
Mm-hmm.
ironically, right? He's looking for a heart, and it wasn't looking for a heart to beat. Um, with regard to the other pieces, there's no question at the top of the Enneagram, those are people who react from their gut instincts. They're not thinking about something. So it's how as B's taught me, this is all about how one reacts,
Mm-hmm.
partially in fear and partially in other things. So as a three or two or four, we tend to do it from an emotional perspective. In my case,
Right.
it's unemotionally.
Correct.
The people who like B's and eight, he reacts from his gut, right,
Yep.
strongly. And then there are the people on the 5, 6, 7 piece who tend to react intellectually, probably more logically, the Mr. Spocks of the world, that type of
That's right.
Warren Buffett's. So I think there's no question that this has important bearing. It's very important to understand how someone is naturally going to react, which I think is probably has to be one of the real bases of the Enneagram, this slide, which I think is brilliant. I think this, aside from your gap slide, which talks about, overviews, this slide is brilliant.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you really described it beautifully. So, and we have all three of these. It's not like we just have one. These are like Michael says, these are reaction or defense strategies to survive. So it's just what we've learned as a way to navigate and survive in a chaotic, confusing world. But when I do a test, I use an assessment that gives you a deep dive of how you ranked your these centers of intelligence. And so you'll have a dominant one, and you'll have a repressed one, and you'll have one in the middle, but they're all in you. And the work we're here to do is to stop living in reaction, stop being unconscious, stop, just having the world pull your chain, and choose how you want to respond. And usually that means developing either um, our own center of intelligence, or developing another one. So real quickly, like Michael said, the nine is the center of the instinct or the gut. The three is the center of the heart, and the six is the center of the head. In the Enneagram, you're always also going to have on the opposite side of those, you're going to have one side that over expresses it and one that represses it or goes inwards. So for instance, the nine is the center of action, but they're confused, right? The nine, the six, and the three, they're conflicted. That's the word, around their particular center. So nine doesn't look like an action type because they're caught between an eight and a one. Eight overdoes action or expresses it, and one represses action or instinct. And the head type, six doesn't know what to do with thinking. So seven goes out in the world and they look like they're not thinking. And fives go inwards and they look like they can't stop thinking. So you have six caught in the middle. It's like ping pong. And lastly, you have Michael's type, the three, the center of emotion. Well, twos are great going out into the world with other people's emotion. They're not always so great with their own emotion. And fours are great with their own emotion. They can just get lost in it. and threes are getting the ping pong in the middle. And so you can see this pattern all throughout the Enneagram and through these three triads.
This is a spectacular insight. And as always, I feel like I'm paint by numbers in many ways, because when you put it in this way with with the lion, the scarecrow, and the Tin Man, now I'm going to remember it forever, because it's so lucid when I think of it. Body, mind, and heart, especially since that's the the Wizard of Oz.
It is.
You wonder if he knew about the Enneagram when he wrote the book.
Well, I think that that's a good point. And I think that the Wizard of Oz has withstood the test of time because it is a universal narrative. But you can see this in the Odyssey. You can see it in the Star Wars movies. You can see it in The Hobbit. Right, it's the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell wrote about it, and what's interesting is it's really a story about Dorothy, and these are all representations of her, right? So they're all inside of her. She is the lion, she is the scarecrow, and she is the Tin Man. And so as she journeys, and I think I read somewhere, it's been a while since I've seen the movie. Now I have to rewatch it. But I've read that it's really the journey of all the way around the Enneagram. You start at home. Remember, no, there's no place like home. She starts at home. She goes out into this journey and she ends up back at home. But that's the journey of life. And when she gets back to home, she's not the same person because she's gone through the journey. And what's the journey? To learn how to navigate with all three of these pieces in her. And she's struggling because the 9, the 6, and the 3 are each one, the head, heart, and gut, are all struggling to own their center of intelligence. So it's really quite beautiful.
It really is supremely deep. You don't think of it as a kid when you watch The Wizard of Oz because it's such a beautiful story, representation, acting, characters. But when you put it in this way, it is profound.
So let's go through each triad and talk about her struggle and really what each one represents. And so let's start with the Tin Man, since that kicked off our show down in Naples at the parade you were involved with. So let's start there.
Yeah, I did dress up as a Tin Man. I did not look as good as the Tin Man on the slide. It was some people thought I looked like a Rocket Man, a 60s guy trying to lose weight in the silver outfit.
I thought maybe you were a conspiracy theorist and it looked like one of those
exactly.
tinfoil,
some people thought I was a lunatic, etc. But it did make me think about the Tin Man.
So it's probably been a while since you've seen the movie, right?
Yeah, it has been, but I've seen it enough, right? For sure.
So remind us, because again, it's been a while for me, but remind us, the Tin Man is on a journey
he's in a journey because he's searching for his heart. Literally, he does not have a heart, and he's trying to get a heart. And the deeper part of it is not a heart from the perspective of the pump blood. Mm-hmm. He wants the heart to have feeling, for feeling purposes, just like the scarecrow wants courage because he doesn't have courage, and the straw man wants a brain because he can't think. So that's the journey of the Tin Man. He's searching for a heart, and he's eventually awarded a heart at the end of the movie. But to your point, I think if I remember in the movie, they basically said he always had a heart. Right. He just didn't know it. And you really just summarized that beautifully, because he protected Dorothy, and he was kind of her protector. He protected her against various attacks from various monsters and other things, and was her protector.
So that's really the nature of the Enneagram, and also the Wizard of Oz, clearly. And that is that it's sort of like Michelangelo was asked about the sculpture David. Somebody said to him, "How did you carve David?" And he said, "I didn't carve David. I removed everything in the marble that wasn't David. David was in the marble." Right? All Michelangelo did was remove the things that were in the way of him getting to David. And I feel like that's the same with, so for example, the emotion, the heart of the three, the journey of the Tin Man, the journey of a three, and this is for 2, 3, and 4, but 3 really represents that ambivalence and, disconnect from it. It's not a journey outward, it's a journey inward. It's there, right? It's just underneath the marble.
Uh, I think what you've been able to help me in particular with, and I've come to realize that now that I know that this is the issue and that I'm self aware, it makes me try to influence the other areas of the Enneagram, which are going to supplement and improve my overall ability to grow. So knowing that I'm a Tin Man, or that my nature is Tin Man-ish, I know that now, and that helps me become less. I'm never not going to be Tin Man completely, but maybe I'll have a bigger heart.
Or to look, the issue with the Tin Man isn't that he doesn't have a big heart, it's that it's shielded by all that armor, right? Not coincidentally, what is he wearing? It's tin. He's wearing the armor.
Yeah, I mean, you're Doctor Deep here. I'm just a financial guy. That's deep, right?
It's not deep
It's,
because no, it's not deep because you're wearing the three-piece suit, because the financial world armors up
yeah,
against the emotion, because you don't want to, not you, but in that
yeah. No,
space,
it's true, right?
you
The Tin
gotta
Man.
distance from.
I'd never considered it. The Tin Man is wearing armor. Of course, it's another. Never. I mean, it's tin, but he's wearing metal. He's wearing armor for sure.
So a lot of threes will use trophies, or use, their sporting outfit, or use grades, or use their titles that's armor, right? There's a distance between me and the person across from me with whatever my particular armor is, and it can be different for everybody. And so the work of the Tin Man is to look. You're not going to get rid of your armor, but can you A, know that you're armored up, and B, can you learn how to, right, feel underneath there? And of course you can, and you're an example of that. It's interesting too. I mean, think about the Tin Man, and so the twos have their own kind of armor. Twos armor up by taking care of everybody else's feelings. So they're really sensitive. They're really empathic. They're just not always great about letting people into their heart. And that's the shared piece of the 2 and the 3. And then the 4 on the other side is really great about going underneath the armor and digging in the underneath the armor and feeling the feelings, but they may become selfish, and they may not give, right, or tend to other people's needs. And so you can feel on either side of the 3 are extreme expressions. That's why the 3 has it so hard.
Wow.
So that's the 3. I mean, that's the
And
heart.
this is why we love B, because when I say he's an encyclopedia of knowledge, not just in the Enneagram, but just bring everything into it: finance, business, strategy. It's unbelievable.
Thank you. And so let's, before we move on to the head and thinking, let's just what are some applications or ways that this shows up in finance in your world? Because I've seen it working with some of your clients, but tell us.
Well, I think it's twofold. First of all, it makes me realize that um, I guess my strength in finance is the ability to be unemotional when bad things are happening.
Mhm.
So probably what drove me to finance and what drove me to the military. So I can do okay when things go badly, and that's necessary in this business. It can be very stressful because things go badly half the time. Then so that's the original part. The other more important part is, and I think I've relayed this in other podcasts and related to B, when I would deal with clients or deal with staff or deal with other people, especially on presentations or on communicating information, I had a very standard approach. I would give PowerPoint slides, I would relay information, I would kind of be um, very robotic, Tin Manish, in the sense of here's the agenda, here's the information, here's how you did financially, here's your rate of return. And once you coach me about it, I realized, probably should have realized it earlier, but realized that, yeah, that works for my fives. It works for certain eights. It might work for a few ones to some degree, But it didn't work for anyone else because a lot of part of the Enneagram could have cared less about what I was saying. They
Mm.
weren't listening to me because I wasn't connecting with them in a way that they needed to. And now I can adjust a little bit to really understand how they receive information, and the language that they need, and be more attuned to it. And as I've said before, I feel like, the Enneagram is 9 different radio frequencies, and I was transmitting in a 3. Now, maybe the 5 and maybe the 8 could receive the 3, still choppy and still static.
Mhm.
But once I figured out how to tune the dial, for those old enough to remember that radios used to have dials, once I got the frequency right, the message was so much better. It was like in stereo. People were like, hey, this makes me feel better. And then as soon as someone said it made me feel better, I realized they were a 2 or a 4. And as soon as someone said, you know, as I analyze this, it makes more sense. And I realized, hey, they're a 5, 6, or 7.
Totally.
And then someone said to me, yeah, that feels good in my gut. And I'm like, oh my God, this person's you know, a 198 maybe. And that makes a difference because that's how they were receiving the information. And it's just made it um, more pleasant for me too, because it's not as frustrating. Nothing's worse than you try to transmit information and someone looks at you with a blank stare and you don't understand
Well,
why.
but that's why, the achiever in you is such a great thing because, we talked about it was the last podcast. The real drive of the achiever is to actualize potential, right? To bring it to reality. And you can't do that if you're not connecting with the person across from you, because even if you win, you lose, right? So you want to get them all the way there, not just making money, but to enjoy the process and to live when we've talked about it before, it's a means to an ends. And so now you're really seeing people, you're connecting with people, you're actualizing the potential. And I would say lastly, the heart, the 3, you give yourself a harder time oftentimes than I think you should, because we need that armor as the 3, and the emotion can overtake 2s and 4s. They need to learn how to look more 3ish in that way, of bringing down some of that emotion, especially when it comes to finance, because you can make some bad decisions if you're making them purely based on emotion. So lots of important contributions of the 3 and the Tin Man. All right, let's move to the Scarecrow, Enneagram 6. Tell us about the Scarecrow.
Well, the scarecrow doesn't have a brain, so he can't think. Although he realizes he does, he's smarter than he thinks in the end. Of course, that's the journey there. But he's in search for, he doesn't believe he's logical enough and smart enough in other things. And the strength of the 5, 6, and 7, or the superpower or weakness, can be in the head, the thinking.
That's right. There's the 6 represents this conflict. The 5 overthinks. 5 sometimes I'm talking to, and I've heard them described sometimes as basically they're a head that happens to have a body, right? It's like their body just carries their head from meeting to meeting or relationship to relationship.
Yeah. Well, I watched Becoming Warren Buffett at your recommendation
That was a good
this
documentary,
weekend, and
wasn't
that's Warren Buffett.
it? Yeah.
Just a head. It's just a head of quotes and information.
Yeah, and he's had to work to, right, to get into the heart and get into, other areas. But then the 7 on the other extreme, they're usually mistyped and something else than a head type, because they don't want to think oftentimes. Again, reactive. They don't be why? Because 5, 6, and 7, the head types are dealing with anxiety. That's where
Yes.
anxiety comes from. It comes from your head. It comes from 3 in the morning thinking about things. And so the 7s will try and outrun their anxiety, outpace it, keep moving, the newest thing, the most fun opportunity. Don't talk to me about the negativity. And so if they're not careful, they look like they're running from thinking. 5s overdo thinking, and 6s, the scarecrow, caught in the middle. And it's like they just
Yeah,
check out.
for sure. And I think, as you know, I think the 6 is the toughest sometimes, at least for me to understand. And as you've always said, if you're not sure what other Enneagram number someone is, they might be a 6, or maybe should be a 6. But the sixes are a complicated lot.
6, 9, and 3 are the hardest to type for the reasons we're talking about, because their survival strategy is not, it's the difference, Michael, between running towards a goal and running away from something you don't want in your life, right? They might be look like the same action, but you can feel when somebody's running from something versus running towards their dreams, running towards what they want.
Mm.
And oftentimes it feels like the 3, 6, and 9, if they're reactive, they're running from that emotion, they're running from the thinking, they're running from the action. And so they're they become like this chameleon quality. Like you just don't know where to place them, and that's hard to nail their type sometimes. So sixes are really conflicted around thinking, and you can feel the anxiety oftentimes with the six. It's one of the ways I can tell, right? When you're
Yeah,
around somebody who's just anxious, and there can be a lot
yeah,
of anxiety.
definitely. They have to be one of the top anxiety-driven um, numbers in the Enneagram.
Yes, and I think sixes are really anxious around thinking, twos are really anxious around relationships, and ones are really anxious around details and
Yeah,
perfection. So probably the most three anxious types, but they can all overcome it. Five, six, and seven, when they start, fives think a little less and feel a little more, and sevens think a little more and act a little more responsibly, and so forth. So there's antidotes for each of these back pathways back to their ability to respond and stop reacting. All right, last but not least, we move into the lion.
yeah.
Paulo, tell us about the lion.
Well, the lion was searching for his courage, and courage is a gut thing. You don't think about courage. Courage is a natural instinct in many ways. It's not something you process. It's something that comes. And I think that's the difference between and maybe this is a Viktor Frankl thing you can comment on, B, is the react response. I mean, head thinkers probably do, at least the fives, tend to be good responders. They're such good thinkers. Um, the instinct of, the 198 is definitely, you can feel it's a gut internal feeling. And I know there's been research saying that there are neurons and different cells in the gut that do transmit to the brain in modern research. It's not just a wives' tale about the gut. The gut does have communication ability with the brain. So, but I think it's more like the amygdala. It's more ancient gut feelings, something like courage. It's hard to teach courage, even when I was in the army, right? You don't know sometimes if someone's courageous
Yeah,
until you need to know.
the courage of an 8, 9, and 1 is complicated because I'm not sure it's courageous if I run towards a fire, right, as out of reaction, and there's somebody burning in there and I go to get them. But if it's just this instinctual reaction, I'm not sure that that's so much courage as consciously choosing to overcome your fears. For me as an 8, I sometimes think it's more courageous for me not to take action. It's very hard. Like I'm told all the time, my less is more. Now for a 9, they're the ones who get stuck in inaction because again they're
Yeah.
conflicted, and so I think for them to run towards a fire, to run towards conflict, whatever it might be, that's an act of courage. So I guess it just depends on your natural reaction, as you're saying, and overcoming it.
Well, I think if you want to go to that detail, the lion is a 9 in
Yes,
the Enneagram.
for sure.
He's not an 8, which would be completely different. That's the problem. He wants to be an 8. He wants the strength of an 8, but he's a 9, and that's the nuance here. He's a 9, and he thinks he doesn't have courage, which he can't act on his instincts.
And you can feel that again. He's a 9 because each one of these is the center of their triad. They're conflicted.
Yeah, but again, yeah, that's. I mean, I don't know how you pulled this off. That, yeah, the lion's a 9, the scarecrow's a 6, and the Tin Man's a 3. It's miraculous in a way, and they both the Tin Man needs more 2 and 4, the scarecrow needs more 5 and 7, and the lion certainly needs more 8 and in 1. It's classic. This could be the whole Enneagram system,
Well,
really, in a way.
there's only three types. I mean, really, there's 9, 6, and 3, because then you have these shades of off of the 9, 6, and 3. And I think we sometimes do a disservice saying 2 and 3 are so different. They're just shades, in that crayon box back in the
Right.
day. You got like light blue and cobalt blue and dark blue, but they're all blue.
Right. But like you said, by the end of their journey, the Tin Man learned to a little more two and a little more four and had feeling and heart. He didn't become more eight. He became more two and four. And I think the lion became more eight when he saved Dorothy. And, he did, do that. And certainly same for the Scarecrow. So it is fascinating that they probably expanded within their own types in that journey of the Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
So
And that's probably
kind of fascinating. It is fascinating stuff, but to be able to have a triad of the Wizard of Oz with the superimposed on the Enneagram, that's why I say B's far. He's far outstepping everything because you mention one thing, as I've always said in every podcast. You mention anything,
careful.
and he's already 6 steps ahead of, the Wizard of Oz is the Enneagram. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, by the time I thought about it, I already had the slide.
But again, my work and my challenge, because you were very honest about your challenges, and my challenge is that's a defense mechanism sometimes, because it's a way for me to take control. And eights are very controlling. The challenger is sometimes called the controller, because our fear is that we will be caught powerless, we will be caught vulnerable and exposed. And so my work is really to, you know pull back as an act of courage, and a nine is to step into it, and a one is to, take that off of pressure off of themselves and move out into the world. So each one of the Enneagram types has its reactive side and its responsive side. And I guess I would just end by saying it really is like the Wizard of Oz. It's this journey from home, around the Enneagram, back to home. And it's not the same home when you get there. You're not the same person. Dorothy's not the same. She has grown, she has transformed. And in some ways, I think she's integrated all of these. They're all in her. They're all in you. They're all in me. And so we're not one type. We're all through 9 of these types, and we're all 3 of these triads. Any final words?
The final word is, take a slide like this, and it's a perfect visual image of relating this to your own journey. And this is a journey. When you created the Wealth 360 system, as an example, the whole point of it was 360, the full circle, to integrate not just rates of return and not just, quantitative numbers, but what is the purpose of it, the why, which you always drive home to me, and to use these techniques of reaction, response, of understanding to get to your why. And what was Dorothy's why? Really, she thought she wanted to maybe not be home, right? That's what she was leaving. But then she realized home was her why, and the people around her were her why. So that's what I'm learning from this: is use the why. You say self-actualization, as your North Star towards self-actualization, and to understand where you're going, because that helps with the journey, and all these tools, these miraculous tools to get you and everyone around you towards.
Absolutely. And anybody listening should listen to our last podcast, where we really dive into each 9 of the 9 types and the why that drives each 9. But like Michael said, they're all in you. 360, 3 plus 6 is 9, right? That's not a coincidence.
Right.
This whole thing is built on nines, and you're built on 9, meaning there's 9 fundamental energies, and each one is in you. And our work is to live like a circle, which is, equal, balanced.
It,
So, got to come up with some more topics, more slides. So you're going to throw some more topics out to me after this call, and I'll create some more slides, and our partnership will continue to flourish.
well, I think this slide was inspired by people, looking at the Enneagram, right, who made comments, and I'll tell everyone in podcast video land, some people have looked at the podcast on our website and other things, and then gone to defiantspirit.org and looked at the more detailed overviews that B has done. I've had several people recently who looked at the Wealth 360, listened to it, but wanted to get a deeper dive into each type. And B has done that in a profound way at
Well,
defiantspirit.org on the links. If you want to understand the types more, and I encourage people for that, because a lot of people have asked, about that, how to get more information, and I've also encouraged them to, link up with you with your link, do the test, and to get more into that, so they can get insight into getting this extra tool.
So you can now download the complimentary ebook, so you can kind of just get a feel for it. It's called Nine Enneagram Types Walk into a Bar, and it's fun. You can get everything you need to get started, and I've adapted it as well. Nine Enneagram Types Walk into a Bank, and so that'll be for the Wealth 360 interested folks. I have both of those available, and you can just get them over at defiantspirit.org. Check out finer.com for my listeners. You can work with Michael in finance. You can work with both of us together, and we'll just keep it going.
And when you have them all posted nicely, there's a Wealth 360 on YouTube, on defiantspirit.org on YouTube, links on defiantspirit.org, like B said, on finer.com, but a lot of different places to get the links. Obviously, social media. So definitely look at it. Literally is an encyclopedia of these recordings now, which have to be 30 or 40 of them easily at this point.
Well, thank you. At this point, I would wrap up by, if I was more technologically savvy, I would superimpose a Dorothy dress over you and click your heels together, saying "There's no place like home." But they'll have to use their imagination for that one.
Yeah, I fear for people on that one, but
Well,
maybe next year I'll dress up as the scarecrow in the
all
parade.
right, brother. To be
Okay.
continued. No place like home, and yeah,
There's no place like Naples in the winter, so we'll see you here.
I'll see you there.
Um, I guess that will be, yeah, you'll be here. Well, no, our next recording maybe will be from Naples.
Oh, we have to do a special together again podcast from Naples. So,
Yeah, for sure.
all right.
Okay,
Until then, talk to you.
thanks.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.